y'all. So in our last video, we actually went ahead and installed provisioning services within our existing Citrix farm. So what we're going to do today is we're going to add a second PVS server for that high availability, and I'll walk you through what that process looks like. So very straightforward. So I'm actually on my first provisioning services server here. So you can see under the servers tab, I just have this one. So let's go ahead and let's jump over to the second. Let's go ahead and begin that install. One thing to note is you're going to want to add another vdisk repository if you're doing local storage. So that's what I'm doing on this one. So I went ahead and added another 60 gig drive. I call that vdisk repository. And if you are doing it this way, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go into your control panel. And good news, my Windows updates are up to date. And we're going to go into disk management. And maybe that's why. Yeah, here we go. Disk management. And create and format hard disk partition. So I'm going to actually need to create a new volume for this one I just created. So this is my unallocated disk. So let's go ahead and do a new simple volume. And yeah, we'll just max it out. Interesting. Why won't it let me do my E? Let's unmount my ISO that I mounted earlier. Eject. And let's give that a shot again. So if I go back and forward, it should. Let's try opening and closing it. There we go. So we have the E drive there. And yep, we're going to just keep all default. I'll call this vdisk repository. And once we do that, we should have that available to us. And now I can go into here and I can create the same folder that I created before. Just call it vdisk. And now I have this here as well. Again, this is going to be storing all of my virtual disks. So since I'm doing local storage on both, I'll just end up copying and pasting those across once I get to that point. But let's go ahead and we're going to open the ISO on the second PVS server. We're going to install the server installation. Installation failed. Oh, that one might have already been installed from previously. So I ran into an error before where I didn't have my Windows updates in my lab environment. So it gave me an error, so I uninstalled everything and then reinstalled it. So you shouldn't see that error there. And again, just like before, these are all default, just kind of next, finish. And once this is done, it should bring up that configuration wizard just like before. And there we go. So again, I'm doing boot device manager. That's going to be what I'm going to be aiming for first. And I'm going to run my DHCP service on another computer. I'm not using Pixie, so I'll say that's going to be on another computer. And this is the main difference. So you're going to join this to an existing farm. And you still need to find your SQL database and point to that existing PVS database we created earlier. So we'll do next. And it's this one, Ryan's Farm, that I'm going to connect to. And I'm going to connect to the existing site, the existing store. I believe I only have one, yep. And yeah, that's my license server, so that's good there. And I mentioned this before, the network service account. I'm just going to use my admin credentials that I'm logged in with. And we're not using TFTP. Skip that. And let's go ahead and finish. And I do have firewall on. And since it doesn't like it, let's go ahead and turn that off. Just so we don't have any issues. And if all goes well, we're going to get 5 check marks here. Come on, soap service. let's go ahead and start. And there we go. So that's done. Let's also install the console. You don't need to have the console on this one because you could technically manage it from just that one PVS server. And technically speaking, you can install the console even on your local client as long as you have connectivity to your PVS server. So what should happen is if I go to that first PVS server now and I refresh this, you'll see we have the second PVS server listed here. So pretty straightforward. You have it now listed as both. When we actually accomplish the boot device manager, when we set up the PVS servers, we're going to put both here so we can ensure we're streaming VDIS from both PVS servers. And also, I believe it's here, there's an option for database offline mode. I would recommend here, if you right click your farm and go to options, there's an option for enable offline database support. So if your database does go down, it works kind of, you have a backup. It works kind of like local host cache with Zen Apps and Desktop, where it stores essentially like a light copy of the database, and essentially, or not a light copy, it basically shows you the last vDisk that target device connected to. So if the database does go down, and let's say I connected from vDisk 3, the next time that target device boots up, it's still going to connect to vDisk 3. You won't be able to actually open up the PVS console or make any changes until that database is brought online, but you will still be able to connect your target devices. So just something to note there. I always recommend enabling this just for more redundancy. Alright, so hope this video helped. In the next video, we'll go ahead and set up a boot partition. We'll create that bootstrap file, and we'll try booting into the PVS server. So if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a like, and hopefully this helped.